Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Dan from the Daily Prep. Guys, today I'm coming to you alongside my good friend Marcin from Open Source Ecology and Open Building Institute, doing a little side-by-side Skype interview for you guys today. I'm really excited to have Marcin on. I've been a big fan of his for a long time, followed you for probably close to 6 years now. So thank you so much for making some time and welcome.
Glad to be here, yeah.
So just real briefly, Marcin, just kind of by way of introduction, how is it that you actually came into the whole sustainability, self-sufficient living type movement? Just maybe in a minute or two. How is it that you came into contact with that and started kind of down the path that you're on now?
I was just mind my own business going through life. And then in like 2000 about or so, it was at the PhD level school, I ran into a guy who taught lifestyle engineering. So I started yoga, breathing, and meditation, and my life has changed upside down since then, actually. I was always radicalized to think about how science can do good things for people. But at that point, I kind of really checked out of my program in a sense that I was in a fusion program, fusion energy, and then it stopped making sense anymore. Why are we pursuing this thing if we've got better solutions like solar energy or really regenerative things that we could be doing? So I studied a lot about all the sustainability stuff, and as soon as I finished the program, I started open source ecology, and part of that was because I could not really talk openly to others about the work I was doing. So I thought about this issue of competition, of working openly. And I thought, wow, that's such a waste. And I decided to do something about applying knowledge to solving pressing world issues along the pattern of open source, meaning truly open collaborative development.
So you brought up a couple things there. You mentioned your PhD, and you're not from the United States, correct?
Yeah, I was born in Poland.
Okay. So when you were doing your PhD studies, were you back there, or had you already moved over
No,
here?
this is moved to the U.S. in 1984.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, it was when tanks were rolling down my streets back in Poland at that time when we had the martial law. You had to wait in line for food. So I thought a lot about material security and
Right.
how one country could have it, one country could not. And it's like, what's the difference? Why can't we all prosper? And I think that material security is one critical aspect we still have to address as humanity. We haven't solved that. So we haven't gotten even to the plane where we can talk about prosperity for all, because a lot of people are struggling about resources still.
Sure. Sure. Um, so, okay. So you go ahead and you start open source ecology pretty much right out of your PhD program.
Yeah.
And where were you living at the time?
Madison. So basically got out into some land there, did 5 acres of agriculture, because if you're going to do a civilization reboot experiment, you got to start with land.
Right. Right. And then I know you now live down in Missouri, outside of Kansas City, on a slightly bigger piece of property. Is that right?
Yeah, 30 acres here in scenic Maysville, Missouri.
So what was the transition like? How was it that you came how did you come to live on Factory Farm?
The idea
What's
was
your setup like out there at Factory Farm?
it was a blank soybean field when we got it first. So it was all about starting from a blank slate, totally clean. They came in to harvest the soybeans. We were left there. You had to build some housing. So we did that. Built a earth bag structure, lived there for a couple of years. Then from that, actually, the importance, a little before that too, the importance of technology, how that can make life easy. Thought a lot about that. What are the enabling tools that can make for prosperity in a modern world?
Gotcha. And that actually kind of leads into what I was going to mention next. The first thing that I found when I came into contact with you was the Global Village construction set. And for those of you watching this, anybody that's watched me for any length of time has probably heard me mention that a couple times. I've emailed about it, a handful of times. I've made a couple of videos back when I had hair still. I was talking about it, and I was really impressed with this giant collaborative open source project, like you've mentioned, to really tackle and deconstruct and then construct the 50 machines, or I guess it's maybe 60 now. You guys have upped it.
50.
That the 50.
Hmm.
50, the 50
50 industrial
machines that,
machines.
that civilization is basically built on, or could be built on.
Yeah,
Um, and what
yeah.
was it like? What was it that specifically like spurred that the idea for that project? Like, were you just sitting around one day and you're like, "Hey, there's 50 machine." Like, how did that kind of come about?
Yeah, I mean, it's really fire in the pants. I mean, so we were out there and got onto a blank slate of land and figured out that technology is important. We should use it. And modern technology is maybe evil many times because it's so unsustainable. But the conclusion was if you do it properly, if you are truly in control of your technology, it's something that can be beautiful and regenerative. So I, in fact, go as far as to say that the true ecologist is a technologist too, because technology is about converting natural, abundant resources to make the life stuff of modern civilization.
Right.
And I go on to say that true freedom begins with each and every one of our ability to convert those abundant resources to free ourselves from material constraints. So the role of technology was clear, and I said, okay, let's open source the whole thing because it's so unsustainable right now. You know, why aren't we in control of our technology? The myth of technology is still biting us in the sense that with this amazing technology of today, our standard of living for some is better, but in general, our work weeks are longer and longer. That should not be so. We should have a comfortable lifestyle, very little work, because we have tools that can help us do that faster and better so that we can focus on what's really important. Self-determination, other things.
That sounds so boring though. I mean, don't you just want a $350,000 house and a couple $50,000 cars and a big old boat and a bunch of vacations every year? I'm just kidding. Um, yeah, I think that's really smart, and I like what you said there. You said it really well, but it's not always the ends that are evil. It's just that sometimes the means that we use to get there are like betraying the end. When you're talking
Yeah,
about the destruction and the cost balance, like it's all out of whack.
right. So the conclusion was that any bad technology, polluting or somehow degenerative thing that we use today can be replaced by a wholesome, ecological, clean alternative. And it's just how we do it.
Love it.
So, well, so it's like indigenous people, right? They were all over the place. They survived in a healthy relationship with the environment. Modern man, human, should do the same. We should be in harmony if we use appropriate technology. So how do we make this technology appropriate? Is a good question to ask.
Yeah, and that's I guess probably what you're aiming to show through your global village construction set project of those 50 machines. Using interchangeable parts, eliminating waste anywhere possible, all that kind of stuff. Just as an update, I know it's been a few years since that project officially launched. What's the status of it now? Like, how far are you guys with it?
We've got 18 different machines that have been prototyped. There's four that have been pretty much taken to products like the brick press, the power cube. Um, I would say the house is close, tractor is close. So, but the
Jeez.
point is the next step is about really tapping the economic power. None of this has gone viral until this point. So altogether, there's about 24 replications of the heavy machines that we know of in 7 countries around the world. The brick press has been replicated 12 times in several countries. The best example, perhaps, of a replication is something in Nicaragua, which is a brick production facility that
Okay.
used 2 of our brick presses and 4 of the power cubes. It's a picture someone just randomly uh, who was familiar with our work sent to us. Say, hey, great work, your stuff is spreading down there. So that kind of stuff happened. People replicate independently. We don't know who's done it, but far from viral,
Sure.
right? So when I first started and published the brick press, I thought, oh man, this is so awesome. It's going to go viral because for $5,000 you can have the power of a competitor that sells their machine for 50,000.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, this is going to be great. At that time, I actually had to go through that psychological piece of growth, which says, okay, Now, is my life about making millions, or am I going to give this to the world? And I decided clearly that either I can play the same old game, or I can give it all away, which, because the innovation that's going to happen as a result. And the world over, open hardware has not taken off yet. People don't see that potential yet. We're working on that, but that's the way of open innovation is the way to go. Now, so the next step is how do we get to that viral replication status? What does it take? The products have to be good. We're working on that, but ultimately, people have to be getting their livelihood from this because as a volunteer project, people come and go. So right now we're working on that enterprise development part. We call it distributive enterprise, meaning that we publish our blueprints for enterprises as well. How do you, for example, run a brick production business? How do you produce brick presses or tractors? We document all of that too. And the next step is to make that really the forefront. And we're struggling with how to do that. Recently, just recent news from yesterday is looking at Hero X. It's the crowdfunding where you crowdfund a design challenge. So you crowdfund a reward to do rapid development, and that's by the X Prize people like Peter Diamandis and all that.
Okay.
That's an approach we're exploring right now because the roadmap, which I can send you, is a 20-year roadmap to achieving the open source economy, where open source hardware reaches about $1 trillion mark. That's pretty ambitious. But I think if we can really get smart about how we do this, we can do this maybe in like 5 years. So I kind of like, after reading this stuff, there's actually a book called Bold. Get a copy of that. It talks about the crowdfunding, which, I mean, we're doing the crowdfunding right now on Kickstarter. But what about crowdfunding design challenges? Like, for example, Local Motors, they do that. They're the crowd-sourced car design outfit that's not super open source, but they get the crowd challenge idea.
Right.
So add the pure open source crowdfunding subject matter experts that we're able to get because people like our work. How do we really do it? It's a huge question. It's, at some point, it's like after the TED Talk, I kind of transitioned to the thinking, okay, what does it take to shift from that vision to execution?
Yeah.
Now, that's not easy. That's the entrepreneurship part. You really got to be good at it and a lot of skill sets to gain. But we're working with a lot of cool people. Actually, I'm getting coached by the person who's called the Growth Guru. I don't know,
No.
Cameron Harold, who started 1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Wow.
This is through TED. Through TED Fellow Coaching, where we get access to things like that. But yeah, we're really trying to work out how do you scale this. The latest thinking on that is because people have not been replicating this, training. We need to have an explicit effort at training people to do this. Like, we've built the houses, we can do it in 5 days.
Right.
We can build the machines in a single day, but nobody's replicating because it's hard.
Right.
So immersion training is our next thought. So we want to do an immersion training program, start that next year with a couple, 2 or 4 pilot students, and then scale that, pretty much double that every year for 17 years until we get the numbers we're looking for.
Yeah. And I think that's really smart, the education component, because, we talked offline for a minute, and I was talking about the power of case studies. And I think that it's like people want to buy into a better version of themselves. And if they can see the version of themselves that's building compressed earth brick houses because you've shown that to them, then I think it's a lot easier for them to make that mental jump, and then also the execution, like the actual execution of where they are now, like buying a CEB machine, and they're going out and they're making these low cost, high quality, affordable housing for other people. So I think the education component, I'm not the expert clearly on any of it. I'm just like hanging on everyone's shirt tails for the ride because I think what you guys are doing is cool, but it definitely sounds like you're headed in the right direction with that. And I also think when we talk about things like a CEB machine and some of that kind of stuff, it seems like the adoption has to be pretty, like, it's got to take hold strongly outside of the U.S., I would think, just because there are so many regulations, and there's so many like regulation and just taxation and hindrances, building codes, things like that would prevent things with housing in particular, I guess is all I can think of right now, but it seems like it would be a perfect use case for developing countries, even emerging markets that would like to find a more affordable, more sustainable alternative to, stick construction or whatever it is. So,
Right. A lot of that's a very common comment from most people. I always respond, it's like, well, I got to fix my own backyard first because I'm not familiar with those environments. People
yeah,
say that's going to be easier, but we have to make it work here. Someone's got to take care of this country.
yeah, yeah, we need it.
Yeah.
You mentioned a second ago, I just transitioning for a little bit here. You mentioned a second ago that you're working with some really cool people. You have access to a lot of different experts and lots of folks that you're working with.
Yeah.
I happen to know from your last Kickstarter video that you actually are in the trenches with your wife on this on a lot of these
Yes.
projects. What's that been like? Just kind of on a personal note, like what's it been like? Rubbing shoulders with her, like alongside each other, like trying to get work
Yeah.
done. And how did she start working with you guys?
Yeah. So we met at TED Global. She's another TED fellow. So both of us have TED Talks.
Wow.
We're leaders in the open source hardware community. And working together it's a challenge because you got your whole life wrapped into this, so your personal life and the work life are all mixed together. And in fact, we're dog fooding the products. I mean, we live in a house. Um, Behind that, I mean, this is the house we built with the bricks and all that. So we're
I
really
should have told
living
you to give us a
closely.
tour, man. That would have been sweet.
Yeah,
I won't put you on the spot now, though.
right. Yeah, like for example, the aquaponic greenhouse is in front of this house. We got our towers and fish and all that, chickens and stuff. So we live in a pretty intense environment. It's kind of like we live and breathe it. So that's challenging, but other than that, it's also extremely rewarding too that we're able to share that common passion. So it's awesome and it sucks at the same time because of you know we live and breathe it. That's our life.
Yeah, yeah. Familiarity
Altogether,
breeds
it's
contempt, as they
amazing.
say.
Well, part of it too is showing that that a family could do this. Just that's also a good example to show that I know when I was here alone or kind of the solo warrior, was kind of like, oh yeah, this guy can live in a cave.
Yeah.
Now I gotta get a little civilized here. So
That's true. That's true.
yeah,
I do like that, and I like that. I think we have maybe case studies of people like you say that are single that are going off and doing
yeah,
lots of different alternative lifestyles with little to no problem because it only takes one commitment like them. So it is pretty cool that I think that you guys are
yeah.
doing that. So
Well,
um,
and the project itself is kind of it's caused by that as far as Open Building Institute, because we found that the house was just not adequate for both of us. It was a micro house,
yeah.
and well, that's how it started.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually a perfect transition because I wanted to bring that up next. Um, just tell us a little bit about Open Building Institute, your latest project, and really
Yeah,
like what the vision, like what would you say the vision for
yeah,
that kind of is?
yeah. This project builds upon all the work, the machines and production tools of open source ecology to put together a product that's tangible, a house. And while a lot of people may not know what a tractor is or not care about the brick press, they certainly care about a house, eco house that's low cost, modular, and all the loaded with ecological features. So it's a nice way to encapsulate a lot of our development into a tangible product that I think has a great potential of going viral. So that's what it is. So as far as the Open Building Institute, there's several aspects of it, and that's why we're kind of struggling actually about how to communicate it on Kickstarter because each of those components could be a full project in itself. So one, we've got a library of design files that you can download and actually design houses with, of engineered modules that we've developed that actually work to build a house. The second part is you can say the ability to develop further modules. So a crowdsource effort to develop more, you can download them and play with them and submit new modules to the system. The next part is immersion training for builders. So we're not only talking about people downloading and building themselves, but the fact that you can hire a builder wherever you are, because most people are probably not going to build their house in today's economy. So training, so immersion training, a 6-month program that we're developing starting next year to bring this to other locations. The next part is the open source materials production facility. Now that's a big one. So we're talking about our brick press to making stabilized compressed earth block. We're going to burn limestone to make lime to stabilize the bricks with, or make concrete with that. So you're talking about local concrete from a quarry 10 miles away. Next is biofiber insulation. That's pulverized newspapers or biomass. You add some borax to that, and there's insulation, like blown cellulose insulation. Then a sawmill, open source sawmill. So wherever you got trees, you got lumber. Next is 3D printed polycarbonate multi-wall greenhouse glazing that we can take from the scrap stream. So polycarbonate, like old CDs, that's polycarbonate. Melt that down, turn it into filament. Then you can print the multi-wall glazing of polycarbonate like we use in our current greenhouse. And that you can do with a large format 3D printer. So it's going to be all open source. That's pretty amazing. We're excited about that. Next part is paints, open source paints, and also the charcoal, which would be used as fuel, as for engines, like a gasifier engine that we did last year. It would be used for water filtration, if we do the water filtration system for the off-grid house, and it would be used to regenerate the landscape with biochar. So those products are in the open source materials production facility. I think I hit most of the products there. So basically think about a solar-powered facility like this, run 20 to 40 kilowatts of solar power on a big roof, and you're producing all these materials for sale in your local market. So how do you get local materials? Well, we're not going to ship them. We're going to ship the blueprints that you can build one of these facilities at low cost wherever you are. So
Gotcha.
basically taking the cost way down in terms of building a facility like that. A brick is precious. I mean, a brick can sell for a couple of dollars a pop, you know. And our machine makes 600 bricks a minute, an hour. So we're going to be making $1,200 an hour, you know, whatever that is. But we want to supply the local markets. I want to see people building with our bricks, with all the local materials in our communities. Maysville, 1 mile away. Let's get some of this going here.
So here's the question: will the facilities that house all these raw material production efforts be built out of the compressed earth bricks?
And our own lumber, and once we get good at it, our own steel that we roll from scrap steel using our induction furnace and metal rolling that's in the Global Village construction set.
So, but where's the facility to build those raw materials to build the building for the facility?
You got to start somewhere.
I know, I'm just messing around, but man, that's a lot. That's a huge mouthful of, you know, and I don't know if that was even all the components to Open Building Institute, because I jumped in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're talking about the education, the plans, the education, and then providing people with the raw materials at the local level, so that they have everything they need basically to go out and create their own economy or microeconomy right there, you know, within 10 miles, like you say, and affect the people that are within that like 50-mile radius or 100-mile radius or whatever. So
right,
it's a lot.
Construction, yeah, it's huge. I mean, I think that's big. Construction is the largest polluting sector, 39% of all carbon emissions in the United States. We can address that.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't mention what the product is. The product specifically is a structure. So I didn't say anything about the extreme build methods. We can build one of these houses that would be 700 or 800 square feet in a period of 5 days using our rapid parallel build methods. A bunch of people swarm the build of all the different modules in parallel, then assemble them rapidly into place. So the price point, our goal for this 800, let's say 750 square foot structure is 25,000 in materials, but loaded with super ecological features. So we're talking about 3,000 watts of solar. You got, I can send you the infographic on the features, but including things like pellet burner, thermoelectric generator for nighttime power, biogas digester for cooking gas and making fertilizer, subfloor heating, CEB floors and walls, some of the biofiber insulation. So we're just stacking this thing full of features. Super efficient fridge, basically a chest freezer to fridge conversion that runs on 8-watt average power. Super efficient lighting with bulbs at 3 watts, so you really need like 11 watts to run your house at night. Or the fridge can be turned off because it stores enough cold during the day, and you got plenty of power during the day, 3,000 watts.
Yeah.
So that's all included. So it's like getting, it's competitive with the cheapest of any house out there, except it's just stacked with cool stuff with the goal of meeting Living Building Challenge certification by 2017. So that's the highest standard of regenerative building, formed by the Living Building Challenge. Bob Berkebile, who created that, is on our board of advisors. So we got, once again, as I mentioned, we've got some powerful players on our advisory team.
Yeah.
So we're going to do it all.
So not only, just to reiterate, like what you're saying here, not only are you offering a really compelling house package at a super affordable price point, but you're also engineering in all these features that are saving people, they're super efficient, they're saving people resources for years and years to come. And then one other thing that you didn't mention, but I know, it shows in your Kickstarter video, is that this house is expandable at any time because of the kind of like the panel approach, like the Lego approach. So like your wife mentions in the video, she does a really good job, and she mentions how you guys actually expanded your own house using this method. And anybody that needs to increase their footprint with, maybe a new baby, or if they're taking in elderly parents, or just bringing people into their house, has that opportunity at any time.
Exactly. So we started with a 12 by 12 interior structure. And I got it a little tight pretty quickly in the middle of a cold winter. Now we're 10 times as big with an aquaponic greenhouse in front. So we didn't mention about the aquaponic greenhouse, which produces all the fish and vegetables a family can eat. And that provides heat in the winter. So we actually were able to halve our heating bills. We run on wood with the hydronics. We have the hydronic tubing going right into the ponds to heat it up.
Oh, cool.
But because the greenhouse is in front, it traps energy in the winter.
So, side question, kind of veering away here from the main topic that we're talking about. How long have you played around with aquaponics for? I'm curious.
1 year. First build was last year. We got the guy from a project called Open Source Aquaponics, William Bombardier, who's been working on that. He filled in the fish content. We had people on mushrooms, on growing towers, all this open source stuff. Put it together, basically. And one thing I'm really proud of is some really cutting edge work on integrated pest management. So we've got Ron Whitehurst, who was advising, and he's runs an insectary, but he's an expert on integrated pest management. So this is beyond organic. We're not spraying stuff. We're using bugs typically to get rid of other bugs.
Love it.
And little tree frogs.
Love it. Oh yeah, love it, man. That's awesome. We need to talk offline probably a little bit more about that, because I'm super interested in that.
So, continue on because we're going to build that again.
Okay.
November 11th through the 15th. Sign up through the Kickstarter. Sign up. But the goal right now is, we've seen that the towers work. Each tower has 22 spots for plants. So 48 towers grows you about 1,000 plants in this very small area. It's amazing.
That's crazy.
We're going to add microgreens and sprouts to that, so we can show that you have a revenue model of producing 2,000 per month in a CSA type model. That's our goal. We want to show that you're not building yourself a house, you're building a factory for food, and then down the road it's going to be a little micro factory, your garage workshop with your CNC torch table, your industrial robot for welding, and CNC machines that you can be producing cars and tractors out of your garage, and food in your greenhouse and all of that.
Yeah, the microgreen stuff is pretty lucrative business from a financial model perspective. I know there's, like Curtis Stone, the spin farmer guy. There's actually a guy out there locally outside of Kansas City that I hung out with last year when I was out there with the urban farming guys, that just has a really small operation. He has 2 greenhouses. You may know him even, but he just goes around. He sells to like 6 or 8 restaurants. I have his contact info somewhere, but
yeah, let's share that. One of the things is the sprouts and microgreens are one of those things that people who know how to do that like to hold on to really tight because it's so lucrative. So we haven't open sourced that yet.
Yeah.
I mean, we can of course go on that, exploring that for months or years, but we'd rather learn in a day
Yeah.
for what a successful system looks like. So looking for that subject matter expert actively. If you know about sprouts and microgreens, uh, help us out and
Okay.
develop this model for the whole world.
I have his contact info. We only met one time. It's been about a year, so we'll talk offline.
Yeah.
But yeah. So okay, here's my question about the aquaponics. And then we'll wrap up because I know you got to run. But
Yeah.
is like everything I've never really experimented with aquaponics myself yet, but everything I've
Hmm.
heard about it is that the main yield is the plants. It's the vegetables. It's the
Hmm.
greens, the tomatoes, all that kind of stuff. Is there any kind of like sizable fish harvest that you guys are doing 1 year into it, or is it pretty much just the plants like people
Hmm.
say?
For yourself, the we have 3,000-gallon ponds. They're dug with a backhoe into the ground and lined with polyethylene and stabilized with some wood on the sides. A yield of 3 pounds of fish per day.
Wow. Okay.
So that's not won't get you so much revenue in terms of, okay, so you're talking about 3 pounds times 30 days,
Yeah.
100 pounds. So about say about 100 pounds per month. So that's only like a couple of hundred, $2 to $4 a pound, $300. Well, the greens get you much more revenue, but
Sure.
as far as your self-sufficiency
Yeah.
for your fats and oils from the fish and the protein, yeah, you can't beat that as far as a significant crop. Absolutely, you can go off grid on your protein needs with the fish.
Interesting. What fish species have you guys
Tilapia,
tilapia?
using
Okay.
tropical tilapia, which that's why we have the hydronic tubing going into that, so we kept
Keep
it
that
about
water warm.
70 throughout the whole winter. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, you
Hmm.
mentioned. I just want to say one thing here for the people watching because we've talked now. It's we need to wrap up here. It's been a little while, but throughout this interview, we've talked a lot about ideas that just make sense, and you have thrown
Hmm.
around a lot of words. You've talked about efficiency, and there's people out there. You didn't really use this word, but the green movement, all these different things that I think a lot of folks sometimes write off because they're like, man, that's hippie stuff. I'm not into that. I don't care. Like that's just like people hugging trees and like, you know, worshiping the earth or whatever. But if you're in that camp and you're watching this video, I just want to point out that everything that Marcin's saying is it's a simple matter of resources. And when you start talking about resources and you strip everything down to just what makes sense and what is yielding more output than requiring input, then it starts making sense on all kinds of levels. So not only is it making sense for the earth, for the trees and the oceans and the animals and all the stuff that you might think is too like hippie or frilly, but it makes sense for you. It makes sense for us as humans to just look at the best allocation of resources. So you mentioned that you mentioned self-sufficiency and the fish component there that you guys have going for yourself, not necessarily as a market farmer type effort, but again, just another compelling model, I would say, for resources, and you're getting out so much for what you have to put in. So hopefully people keep that in mind as they hear about these concepts, going forward. It's smart ideas are smart
Yeah.
ideas, and if you can maximize resources, maximize output for input,
Right.
do less harm, all this kind of stuff, just makes sense.